Yes, thank you so much for having me. And just as a point of clarification, the question and answers plus presentation is 30 minutes, or is it 30 minutes then question and
Yeah,
answer?
we usually try to reserve 30 minutes total for the presentation and the questions and answers. If
Great.
that if that will work for you.
Oh, yeah.
We're pretty flexible though, so
Yeah. And our introductions were short today, so we have a little more time.
they were.
Okay, good.
Finish up by quarter of 12, I would say.
Great. Well, we can certainly make that happen. Well, thank you again for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Um, so again, my name is Jeff Seelan. I'm the program manager at the Durham Public Schools Hub Farm. The Hub Farm is the outdoor learning facility for Durham Public Schools. I imagine most of you have some familiarity with the Hub Farm. So my intention for today is to kind of talk about where we are right now and where we're headed in the context of our strategic plan for the next 3 years. And I'll try to get through this in 20-ish minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. And I don't know how you all usually do this, but if there are any questions during the presentation, that's always fine with me. I'm a teacher, at heart, so I'm used to having people jump in the middle of my spiels. And it's okay. So, like I said, the Durham Public Schools Hub Farm is the outdoor learning facility for Durham Public Schools. We've been around for almost 13 years at this point. Um, I'm just going to go through a couple of preliminary items, including our vision, mission, and guiding principles, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we're thinking about student engagement, some of the changes that we're making, and then hopefully we'll have lots of time for questions and answers. So the Hub Farm is a one-of-a-kind outdoor learning facility. I say that because there really aren't any facilities like this that are part and parcel of a school district. We all work for Durham Public Schools. Our campus is Durham Public Schools property. And I don't believe, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, that there are any other school districts in our state that have something like this, that is essentially a free resource for students. And so our mission is to engage our community at large by offering meaningful outdoor experiences for students and staff, career and technical education opportunities, and also building relationships through outreach and sustained partnership. A little context there is historically the Hub Farm, with the exception of the staff salaries, has been completely funded independently through grant writing. And that's something that we're exploring making some adjustments to, although there are pros and cons to getting more funding from the school district itself, because when they give you more money, they can always take it away. So I think that it's definitely not a perfect solution to say, well, we spend all this time writing grants, that takes away from our capacity. DPS, could you pay for some more things? That could always turn out negatively because, there can be budgeting shortfalls, for example. And then guiding principles would be things like collaboration. So working with schools, with our departments within the district. So we don't dictate everything by fiat. We want to know what teachers want, what our administrators want, what our other departments want in terms of operation and building services and capital planning. We try to be accessible. We're a large campus. We're about 30 acres with a lot of wooded and uneven terrain. So accessibility is always something that we're trying to keep in mind, but it's not a perfect situation right now. But a lot of the improvements we've made over the past couple of years have been to make some of our learning spaces more accessible for people with mobility issues and disabilities. Equity is a huge guiding principle in the sense that we want to try to make our facility open for as many students in as many schools as possible. Sustainability, that would go in the environmental direction, but also the programmatic one. We want to make sure that the way we do things is sustainable, not just for things like our budget, but also the programs themselves. Do they make sense? Is it easy to turn over programming to new staff members when people ultimately go away? And then reciprocity. So what are we doing for students, but also when students are involved, especially in the context of things like internships for high school students, how are their how is their learning overlapping with things like maintaining a lot of our growing spaces? So trying to take theory and turn it into praxis, and also make sure that that praxis continues the management and operation of many of the physical assets that we use for other school groups as teaching tools, like our learning garden, for example. So the strategic plan, it's broken into 3 groups: student engagement, outreach and visibility, and then our infrastructure and grounds. Right now, I would say the main focus is that student engagement piece, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that looks like currently and where we're kind of taking it. So what we want to do is split our programming into 3 separate cohorts of age groups. So K through 5, middle school, and high school. Right now, the way that we run programs is pretty ad hoc. So interested teachers will apply or register for a field trip, and we'll kind of schedule them as they come. What I would like to see going forward is something along the lines of a grade level field trip, which we already do in a number of different grades at DPS. So for example, all 4th graders that go to Durham Public Schools have the opportunity to visit the Museum of Life and Science. So right now we have a task force that's focused on K through 5, that age cohort, exploring how students are currently using the Hub Farm, what the barriers to entry are, and creating a best case use scenario for a particular grade level to use the farm. And then because the Hub Farm is housed within CTE, which stands for Career and Technical Education, that's where our salaries come from. We are trying to build out more programming for students in middle and high school grades, in the hope that that can help us get a little bit more funding from our department. But more importantly, I think that the Hub Farm itself provides opportunities to introduce students to real world career-based learning. So really hands-on things like working in a greenhouse, working in a garden, working in an orchard, working with natural spaces, including our forests and trails. And then we want to continue to expand our focus on Indigenous history and culture at the Hub Farm. This is a pilot program that we've been working on for a couple of years. We have a lot of support from curriculum and instruction. They have been essential in helping us build that program out. So what started as a few small groups of elementary school students visiting in the fall and spring, starting in 2022, has expanded to a program where we can do 400 students in elementary school over the course of 2 days, which is a huge leap in student engagement over a short run of time. And basically what it is we've partnered with a group of people based in Lumberton who are members of the Lumbee tribe. They are very, very well known, not just within the country, but internationally on the powwow circuit. And they do a great program where they come to the Hub Farm and directly engage our young students about their culture. So doing things like music performances, social dances, arts and crafts, language studies, and also really, really great show and tell where they actually let students handle artifacts that are culturally significant. So in the next 3 years, what we'd like to see is, like I already said, we want to see if we can get a grade level field trip for students K through 5 at the Hub Farm. And the idea behind that is while the total enrollment for Durham Public Schools is 30,000 plus students, we could never see all of those students every year. It's not feasible. I've run the numbers. It's not going to happen. However, wouldn't it be great if you could say, just in the same way that all students at some point in their elementary school experience will go to the Museum of Life and Science, we can also say all students at grade level X will partake in a field trip at the Hub Farm. We're exploring the programs that are offered at our 13 middle schools in the lens of CTE to see which programs we should build out for those courses. And then we're also focusing on a high school internship, which is an actual course that you can take in North Carolina. The CTE course of study for the state has a program that's just called internship, where students will have a teacher of record at their school. They'll also work with their career development coordinator at their school, and then they will go to a work site. In this case, it would be the Hub Farm for 120 hours in a semester. And so we've piloted this by running an after-school program for the last 2 years, where we had students coming to the farm for about 30 hours total. So we already have the groundwork laid to just transpose what is about 30 hours of work into 120 hours of work. And the added bonus of that is that this would also not just give them experience that they can put on their resume, this would actually give them course credit. And that's really important to us because we want, that career learning to take place, of course, but we also want to have them come away with credit towards graduation. And then we want to see if we can increase the participation from about 400 to 500 students for that Indigenous program to somewhere between 12 and 1,500 students. So then looking at outreach and visibility, we want to lean on more intentional marketing and media, not just through the infrastructure that we have here within our school district. We have an excellent Office of Community Affairs that we can rely on. And we want to use this as a tool to bring students back into the school district, because right now what we're seeing is and again, this isn't a criticism of the charter school programs. We do work with them, and I've seen students getting an excellent education there. But of course, they are moving dollars out of our school district. And so what we'd like to see is that proportion of students enrolled in charter schools or leaving the school district come down from where it is right now, which is around 25%, which is large. That is a pretty big proportion of students not enrolled in our public school system. We also, in the past, have had some really great relationships with nonprofit and corporate partners. Recently, our volunteer board, which has acted as a 501c3 for many years, dissolved, which posed a problem because, that 501c3 status makes us eligible for certain grants that not only would be difficult to apply for and win through the school district, but it also makes it very difficult to manage the grants. It's just a very cumbersome process working within the bureaucracy of the school district, rather than just having a volunteer board that has a bank account that can restrict funding for different things that we win through grants. But the good news is the Durham Public Schools Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of our school district, has decided to absorb all of the liquid assets from our volunteer board, and they're going to provide us with a lot more infrastructure and staff to be able to, look for grants, to win grants, and to manage our restricted funding so that we can pay for things that are not getting paid for by the school district. We've always relied heavily on volunteer work. So we have designated days where people from the community can come and volunteer at the farm. We also have many cases where corporate groups reach out to us and we can do much larger work days with a lot more people and get a lot of things done. We want to increase that and make it more intentional. So basically, if we have a big event coming up, we have a really small team. We have 3 people working at the hub farm full time. So bringing in 30 people for 2 to 3 hours, you can get a lot done in a small amount of time. And that's something that we're looking at increasing. It's also an opportunity to talk about sponsorships, which we currently don't have any formal sponsorships, but that's something that we'd like to formalize more. And then we'd also like to provide more opportunities for our school district staff to come to our campus for professional development, either just as a venue or something that's actually tied into outdoor learning. And we think that doing this will increase the buy-in from schools who are going to be offered more opportunities to take field trips, because there's 56 schools in Durham Public Schools, and I always have to remind myself that, I don't know every single school off the top of my head, and that means that there are teachers throughout our district, there are administrators throughout our district who've never heard of the Hub Farm. So bringing more people to our site who work within the school district to see what it is, to see what opportunities are there for their students, we think that ties directly into that student engagement component. And so ultimately in the next 3 years, we just, like I said, we want to lean into more marketing and media engagement. We want to build stronger relationships with nonprofit and community partners to generate greater revenue. We want to make the Hub Farm more well known as an opportunity to either be used as a venue just for the delivery of professional development or even as a retreat for departments. Ultimately, with the goal in mind being, we just want people to come out and see it, because I think it's hard sometimes to describe what it is, especially because teachers, administrators, people who work in public schools, they're very, very busy. And it's a lot easier to just say, hey, why don't you come out for an hour and check out our space, versus trying to put that into an email that will ultimately just get not ignored, but it'll be deprioritized versus, communicating with parents and other committees and things like that. And then lastly, we're looking at our infrastructure and our grounds. So like I said before, we have a really small staff. It's 3 people. It's myself and then 2 educators who deliver the majority of the educational content that we do on field trips, during internships, or professional development opportunities and workshops for community members. Once in a while, we'll have an intern here or there, but for the most part, it's a very small team. So we're trying to engage with the school district to see if they can pick up some of the capacity problems that come from the fact that, we have a small team that's already busy developing and delivering curriculum, but they're also mostly responsible for the management of a massive campus. Like I said, it's 30 acres, and there's about 6 that we use on a regular basis that requires a lot of mowing and a lot of string trimming, pruning of bushes, beautification, things like that. And then as well, we've had some, safety and security issues. So we're trying to take security here a little bit more seriously. We've gotten some cameras installed and we're working on building some better structures for housing some of our more valuable equipment. And then ultimately, like I said, we want the school district to take on more of the responsibility of dealing with some capital improvements, but we also want to leverage partnerships and able to commission large-scale improvements that might not be feasible for the school district with their current budget constraints. So, oops. In the next 3 years, we really want to continue to focus on accessibility. We also want to help support the capacity of our current personnel by engaging with the district and other community partners to do some of the work that could be done to improve our beautiful campus. And then, things that are less sexy, like identifying risk, eliminating liabilities, things like that. So that's kind of like where we are and the direction that we're headed. And hopefully I did that with enough time to take questions from everybody.
If somebody wanted to visit, Jeff, what's the protocol for that?
If someone wants to visit, send me an email.
Okay,
I'll give you a tour.
great. What's your email address again?
I'll put it in the chat.
Great.
Jeff, this is Megan Hughes. Thank you for that.
Oh,
Are you, is there any federal funding tied to Hub Farm? My organization is just trying to get a sense of who's being affected by federal cuts. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Well, not directly. Indirectly, most of the money that funds the career and technical education department is federal. To my knowledge, none of that has been impacted by any of the changes that are going on currently, but that would just be a salary concern. And ultimately, we'd like to add more FTEs to our staff. So I'm hoping that any changes in federal funding will not prohibit that. But like I said, most of our funding is currently independent. And again, that would be an indirect consequence of any changes to federal funding because there might be grants that are no longer available going forward. But right now, nothing has changed. The only thing that's impacted us from a federal standpoint that's been pretty significant is more of just a vestige of the money that came into the district during the COVID pandemic, which has now all been spent down. But that was always going to happen. I think that it's hard to, you get all this money coming in, right? And it feels like it's going to last forever. And I will say diplomatically that, some people within the district may not have anticipated the implications of that money running out in a timely fashion. And also, just so everyone knows, the email address that I put in there, it is correct. Some people get confused because my name is spelled wrong. And it's been that way for 8 years. So I'm Jeff with 2 F's. It's 1 F in my email. Although I will say, if you spell it the right way, it'll still come to me for some reason.
Could you describe talk a little bit more about the volunteer opportunities, like what kinds of work and how you set that up and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to go about it. On an individual case-by-case basis, we have designated days where we just advertise sign-up slots. And right now we use a pretty basic tool called Sign Up Genius. The only complicating factor is you still have to go through the volunteer registration process for the school district because, just like if you were going to be a volunteer at a school, you have to do like a criminal background check. So when you go to our website and there's a whole page for volunteering that explains the process. Basically, you sign up, you register, it's free. And then once the school district gets back to you, you can just send me kind of like a receipt of that email that confirms that you're able to volunteer at any public school entity. And then you get the link for the sign up genius, and we have days and days and days built out. Right now, it's Monday afternoon. Usually we change the time of day based on the season. So like when it starts getting a lot warmer, we're going to switch that afternoon time slot to a morning time slot. Just because it's very unpleasant working out here in the summer between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And then, sorry, the other component is large groups. We will either be proactive and work with organizations like Activate Good to solicit opportunities for larger, group volunteer work days. But people reach out to us or me all the time saying, hey, I've got a class, I'm teaching a class, environmental studies, for example, at Duke, and I have 10 students and I want to bring them out. And that's something that I can just schedule ad hoc. So there are a number of ways to get involved, either individually or with a large group. And with those large groups, I forego the volunteer registration process because it's too cumbersome. And what I'll do is just schedule those times for when we just don't have students here. And then there's no conflict with people not having passed the background check.
And what kind of work generally are you looking for people to do?
Yeah, no, so it's seasonal. A lot of it's going to be managing our physical assets and grounds. So, right now, this exact time of year, we're growing 2,000, 2,500 plants to give away at our spring festival, which is on May 3rd from 10 to 1. You all should be there. So I'm going to put that in the chat. So if you came today, you'd probably be in the greenhouse stepping up plants from small trays into bigger pots to individual pots to give away to people. But it could also just be like, pulling weeds, helping move, materials that are left over from the winter and getting them put away. A lot of it is going to be physical work, either in a beautification sense or in a facility operation sense. And then people who are really savvy, if they really want, we do have a lot of like 2-cycle equipment like string trimmers. So people who are really, really eager to do that, we might let you swing a weed whacker around a little bit. Things like that. So mostly outdoor, garden-based, physical-based, operational capacity support.
Jeff, this is Tanya. I know Keep Durham Beautiful has held a couple of events which we collaborated with you all on a little bit at your covered pavilion. And I didn't know if you wanted to mention like how that's used and that, it might be a resource.
Yeah, absolutely. So with any community facing event, so festivals, which are essentially open houses, or workshops that are open to community members, we're usually working in the very least with a handful of community partners. So for example, at our plant giveaways, we'll offer tables for different community partners that share mission overlap. So in the example of Keep Durham Beautiful, we might have a table where people are there handing out information. We might have master gardeners there handing out resources so that people could learn more about taking care of our plants. We work with the nutrition arm of the county that's integrated into the school district's Dine. So they'll come and distribute seed packets and recipes, things like that. And then at those bigger open houses, we usually have somewhere between 10 to 15 community partners that we normally will solicit a few months in advance to come and table, because what we're going to see is somewhere between 250 to 400 people coming in and out of the farm over the course of 3 hours. So giving people an opportunity to interact with community partners that share some of our values and have some mission overlap is always something that we lean on. And then that covered space is great for workshops. So I already probably mentioned that we do workshops that are open to the community. And so we'll partner with people like the Cooperative Extension to do workshops on, we have a pollinator series workshop that we do 3 times a year, building birdhouses, pollinator hotels, and bat houses. We also try to have some student involvement in that as well. So a lot of times we'll work with our skilled trade students to cut the lumber for those workshops where we're building stuff. Or in the case of like our mushroom log inoculation workshop that is held every winter at the Hub Farm that's open to community members, we'll usually get additional materials that we'll use as part of our internship programs. And then also that covered space is great for professional development and other meetings and retreats.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought it was great too.
So Jeff, this is Karen. Do you charge for those? Do you charge fees for those? Is there a way to rent out that space so y'all can generate some more income, or just I know it's hard when you're very small staff, but just curious.
Yeah, so when we do charge for those workshops, like for example, the mushroom log inoculation workshop, all the materials are purchased by Cooperative Extension. We don't actually pay for any of the materials. And so Cooperative Extension will just charge a nominal fee to make up for the cost of materials. I think it's somewhere between $10 and $15, and you always take home an artifact. So if you come to the workshop, you yourself are going to inoculate your own log with either oyster or shiitake mushrooms. And then in the case of those pollinator workshops, you're always going to be taking home an artifact. So either a birdhouse, pollinator hotel, or bat house. And again, Cooperative Extension pays for those materials and then charges a nominal fee to make up for the cost. Although the birdhouse workshop is something that we partner with the Audubon Society on as well, and they do everything for free. They bring all their materials for free, and they have volunteers who deliver the content. So those workshops are completely free. And then those larger community events are always free. There are things that you can buy. We usually solicit donations and sell t-shirts. And then in terms of renting out the space, there's actually a separate way of doing that through the school district, just like you would rent out a soccer field. You know, we have a district website called Facilitron. So that isn't even part of revenue generation for the Hub Farm. It's something that the school district manages. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to explore generating revenue. That process is more about just liability.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jeff, could you tell us just a little bit about what you grow at the farm and where the products of the farm are distributed?
Absolutely. So we have a number of physical assets and enterprises that we manage. So we have a learning garden that is around 3,000 square feet, which is large, you know, for one person. You know, that would be a considerable space to manage. In terms of production, however, it doesn't actually produce a whole lot. And because we're not a production first facility, we're not focused heavily on making sure that everything that we grow there is being grown with yields in mind. So what we do with the small amount of produce that comes out of that garden, we either are going to partner with one of our culinary programs, of which there are two in Durham Public Schools. The closest one is Northern High School, which is about 5 minutes down the street. Historically, they've used a lot of our product for catering and other dinners. They serve things to the Board of Education. We give a lot of stuff away to volunteers. So if you come and work for the day and we have a lot of stuff, we'll give you, like a little CSA basket. In the past, we have experimented with the CSA, but it doesn't generate enough revenue to justify the amount of time it takes because, again, we're not production first, we're education first. So a lot of that stuff is either getting used just to introduce students to those products or to give away to volunteers or to like community pantries. And then we also have an orchard, which is about, I want to say, 8,000 square feet. And currently, that orchard is still within the first 2 to 3 years of growth. So, as you know, at that point, there's not a ton of product coming out of there, but ultimately there will be. And that's going to be an amazing space to introduce students to new things like common stuff like apples and plums, but also new products like honeyberries and hardy kiwi and muscadine grapes and hazelnuts and walnuts, things that will take a number of years to see some ROI. But we're very excited about it. It's also going to create a lot of shade one day. And then we have some livestock enterprises as well. So we have chickens. We've always had chickens, laying hens. Right now we have 10. So the volume of egg production is not huge, but it's enough to, again, give away to volunteers. I take them home. My staff takes them home. It's a nice little bonus. Right now, we're being really cautious about our birds because of the bird flu. And then, as you know, Tina, we also have an apiary. I actually just finished bee school with Tina and the whole crew over at DCBA, who have been supporting our apiary for a while now, not just because they like bees, but they've actually sent members out to the farm to help us manage those hives because it's very intensive. And with 3 people on staff and not everyone knowing how to even manage bees, it's very nice to have someone come in every 1 or 2 weeks and just like help us out with the management of those hives. And when we do have honey, we don't really ever get too much, but that's a really good thing to give away as like a Christmas present to people who have been really big supporters of the hub farm. But none of it is at the scale or yield where it would make a meaningful dent in terms of revenue generation. It's mostly teaching tools and gifts for volunteers and community partners who've supported us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jeff. This has been really informative, and also we'd like to know, how people can support whoever's presenting to us. So it's been really informative in that way, and we have your email address. You can follow up as well. So great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you all so much for inviting me out. I love talking about the hub farm. And if you have any questions or you want to get involved, just send me an email and come to the spring festival. It's going to be great. Our theme this year is soil health and biodiversity. So we're going to have a lot of activities that our community partners are facilitating at their booths that have to do with things like vermicomposting and other things like that.
So is anyone from you or anybody else from the Hub Farm on our email list? I'm asking because it's a good way to share information too about what you're doing.
I am not sure.
Okay, well, I can look at that later and add you if you'd like.
That'd be great. I would love that.
Okay, we'll do that.
I've only recently stepped into this role.
Okay.
So I'm still catching up on all the right listservs and mailing lists that I need to be on.
All right, well, we'll definitely make that happen. So great. Okay, we're gonna